This slideshow contains photographs that I took during a 10-week trip to Iceland in 1987 in my Range Rover Series 1. Here I've arrived in Aberdeen, where I caught the Shetland Island ferry called the St Clair, which is a 12-hour overnight trip, arriving in Lerwick the following day. Here's Lerwick during the approach. In the next slide, we're docking in Lerwick and the main hotel you can see in the background. The Nerona arrived about midnight that same day. There's another 12-hour trip from Lerwick in the Shetland Islands to Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands, followed by a 17-hour trip onward to Iceland. Here we are in Tórshavn. I didn't actually get off on this time, but on the way back I have to stay there for 3 days. Coming out of Tórshavn, we travelled through the Faroe Islands. It was very scenic. Here we are arriving in Seyðisfjörður on the east coast of Iceland. It's quite a small town for such a major port. It was rather overcast as I unloaded the Range Rover, and the customs officials were quite surprised when they saw that I was staying for 8 weeks. To get out of Seyðisfjörður to the rest of the country, you have to climb up this valley. You can just see the road, and there's Seyðisfjörður in the distance below me. My introduction to driving in Iceland was quite abrupt, as you can see. These are normal roads for Iceland during that period. Things have changed slightly now, because this road here, the ring road, Route 1, is actually all tarmac now. But at this time, you just looked at the views, you didn't worry about the road conditions, and I brought the Range Rover specifically because of that. There's another image of Route 1 now. There it is. I drove this in 2015 and it's all tarmac for certain. I soon arrived in the Mývatn Lake area of northeast Iceland, near the town of Reykjavík. This hot spring area is fenced off, very sulphurous, smells of sulphur, and is actually dangerous. It's soft crust. If you tread on this, you can actually go through and burn yourself badly. These are mud lakes. Again, you really don't want to get anywhere near these, far too hot. This is a fumarole. It's very noisy and superheated steam coming out. Leaving the hot spring area and going towards Mývatn and my campsite for the night, you go past this geothermal energy plant. Arriving at the campsite, there are 2 huts that mark the entrance. The first is the reception and the second is the toilet block. When I went back to Iceland and visited in 2015, all this had changed significantly. This is what it looked like now. Far more huts and a lot of tour groups using it for camping. Also, there was this church on the main road. I took a photograph then, and then again in 2015 I took another photograph from roughly the same place. As you can see, pretty much identical. These are just a few photographs that I took after moving on from Mývatn of various rivers and waterfalls that I came across. As you can see, it's absolutely stunning, and there aren't many people there. This shot here is actually of the main town of Akureyri while I was travelling down the fjord, which you have to go round to actually get to the town. This is a shot taken from the town itself, just slightly above. Again, here are some more random shots taken after leaving Akureyri and going towards Húsavík on the north coast of Iceland. This is a small but important fishing port, and it's now very popular with whale watchers. After Húsavík, I moved on to a place called Ásbyrgi. This is the ring road again, and then I turned off there across this bridge and entered the Ásbyrgi Canyon. This is an impressive place, and it's one of the few places in Iceland where there are actually any trees. At that time it was possible to camp right inside the canyon. Here we are at Dettifoss. This is just south of Ásbyrgi. This is a very impressive waterfall and the largest in the country, I believe anyway. As you can see, the power of the water. I can't remember the figures, but I know there's millions of gallons go across this waterfall by the hour. After leaving Dettifoss and its brother Selfoss, I continued on inland looking for a geological feature called the Elgir crater or crevice. This was formed many thousands of years ago due to a massive volcanic eruption, and the ash was discovered on the other side of the planet, very much like the more modern version. Here's me, and me again, looking up at a waterfall or at the camera. This is another view of the crater or crevice or crack, whatever you want to call it. Continuing on again inland, heading towards Askja and Herðubreið, which is a tabletop volcano, extinct now, but that's what you can see in the background under the clouds. Here it is again. The girl in this photograph is a hitchhiker from Germany that I picked up, and she stayed with me for several days while we were travelling. This is Askja, and this at the time was the hut at Askja. The two pyramids on the left were the dry toilets, which were all that were available. Askja in 2015 looked like this. It's a major rescue base and accommodation for tourists. Back in 1987, Helen and I walked west from the Askja hut, walking around the volcanic area, this massive lake you see in the background, looking for a smaller lake formed as one of the outlets from the volcano. These are known as Viti lakes. This is it, a milky-coloured lake. This is another photograph I took looking down onto the ice in that area. Spot the road sign. This is actually a road sign in the middle of the highlands. You can't really see any tracks because not many vehicles go that way. Fortunately, somewhat different now. They have major problems with vehicles. There's mine. This is another track in the highlands. That's a very steep drop off there, very steep indeed. After leaving Askja, I travelled to a hut on the northern end of the Vatnajökull ice cap. You can just see it in the distance here with the ice cap behind, or the mountains at the edge. I spent a fair amount of time in this area during the trip, and I climbed up to the edge of the glacier on several occasions. This is one of the shots I took from the top. Here's some more. You can just see Herðubreið in the distance. At the top there's this hot spring area, which is really quite spectacular. It's where you really get ice and fire together, and that's the name of the tour that you can actually buy to go and see it if you're that way inclined. Descending from there, you come across the source of the Jökulsárlón River, which is what you're seeing here. It's right on the edge of the glacier. That's actually a hole down into an ice cave below the glacier. All the dark you see, by the way, is moraine. It's actually volcanic ash that's picked up as the ice moves. This is the entrance to the ice cave. I actually waded up this river and went inside. While I was in there, there was ice falling from the roof, but I was so intent I actually took off my clothes and took a warm bath in this river. It's actually warm. This is coming out. Now, as it would happen, the following day, or that night in fact, there was a glacier burst. These next photos I took over the next few days, monitoring the flow of water coming out of that ice cave that I'd actually been in and taken a bath. It was actually phenomenal, the amount of water coming out of there. And that ice cave has never been reformed. So I was actually the last person that ever went in it. Here you can see the water. The person in the red jacket there, that's Sister. This was another tourist. You'll see him again in a moment. The only way to get up to the top of the glacier was actually wading across this river or using this plank. This is the other tourist on the right, and that's Staney, Sister's husband, on the left. They were the wardens of that hut. A few years before, and one of the things that attracted me to the country, there had been a film on the TV about a group of canoeists starting at the source of the Jökulsárlón River, i.e. here, and canoeing all the way to the north coast of Iceland. While I was there was this group of rafters who were planning to recreate that trip, but in a raft instead of the canoes. This is another place just opposite. What you're actually looking at here is not rock, that is actually ice, and it gives a clear indication of the colour and the volcanic ash that's picked up during the creeping glacier's movements. The next few images are taken at a place called Giza that gives its name to all of these geological phenomena throughout the planet. It is basically superheated steam being expelled out through water, creating a geyser shooting into the air. Geyser itself doesn't actually go up anymore. What you're actually seeing there is a smaller one called Stroker. Still quite spectacular, however. Here's some more waterfalls, another extremely big one. This time you can actually get quite close to it, and one of the photographs in a moment will actually show you side on of the water going over the edge. You could actually reach out and touch this water. Extremely powerful though, so it's ill-advised. The next few shots are just some general scenery of Iceland and travelling around it. As you can see, it's just open. And we're moving now on to yet another waterfall. I've shown this particularly because it's spectacular, but also the canyon that it feeds into gives a very good illustration of a particular type of lava formation. You can just see it in this image at the back. You see these vertical columns of rock. That, I believe, is called basilic lava. It's created when lava is cooled very quickly by the action of water, and it creates these like column effects. Next are a few photographs of a hot spring area by a hut that I took on another cross-country route called the Kjøla route. Very hot in places, but also quite nice to take a bath in one of the pools. The first pool you saw was actually bathable. There is a photograph of me actually lying in it. I'm not sure if it's in this presentation. These are just very small sort of steam vents coming out of water in that area. Ah yes, the next photograph is of me sitting in that first pool. Really nice after a long day just to relax in superheated water, although not so superheated that it boils you alive. Again, this is part of the Kjøla route and the scenery you get while you're travelling it. I also came across this other Range Rover. This belongs to an Icelander and it's heavily converted for travel in their country and travel actually on glaciers itself. Here's a few more random shots. I think these were taken mostly in, well, the Highlands, but in the southern part of the country. This track here leads up to the Jökulsárlón lake. It was also made quite famous on the TV as it's an iceberg lake. The track itself's very steep. I only just managed to get the Jeep up there. I had a passenger at the time, a friend of mine who came in from the UK, and he actually got out and walked. He didn't want to stay in the vehicle. We moved on then back to Reykjavik actually, and I took a flight out to the Westman Islands just off the south coast of the country. It was on a very small jet, and these islands here, one of those is Surtsey, which was actually a new island created in the 1960s. We flew around the islands before landing. This is a shot that or these actual shots will give you an idea about the volcanic eruption of the 60s. On the left here, all this land is actually new, and it nearly closed off what is a very safe harbour. This is a view from the ground. All this land that we're actually standing on is new and still hot from those eruptions. You can see in the background these vent pipes. Those were actually sunk into the new lava and is used to heat water and provide heating for the town and to drive turbines to create electricity. Around the coast you've got all of these sort of outcrops of rock. I believe these were also created during those eruptions. The next gives quite an interesting shot from the new land back towards the harbour. We didn't stay long, it was just a day trip, and this is a random shot when I got back to Reykjavik airport. That's not to be confused with Keflavik airport, which is the international airport. I then moved on round the south of the country. This is going towards an area called Thorsmörk. You will actually in a moment see another road sign stuck in the middle of nowhere. Can you spot it? There's a closer up shot in a moment, but it is in this image too. There it is, bottom left. That is actually indicating the road. Very beautiful area of Iceland. Very well worth visiting. Absolutely stunning for walkers. As you can see that bridge across that waterfall. For working my way further around, this is the southern edge of the Vatnajökull ice cap, and this American-like butte, really right near the ring road. Again, I can't say enough about the scenery. It's absolutely beautiful, and there was almost no traffic. But there again, that was then. Now the prices have come right down, and it is a very popular tourist destination. Continuing around the southeast corner of Iceland, I found a track that went up to the southern edge of the Vatnajökull ice cap. This was quite an interesting climb, as you can see the track just in this photograph. But it brought you up to quite a spectacular area. As would happen, there was a tourist cat trip actually about to leave when I arrived there. You can see here a cat loaded with people and setting off for a trip across the glacier. Unfortunately it was full. As it turned out, I knew the driver, whose name was Gisli. I'd been introduced to him. He actually does this to supplement his living. The track down, as you can see here, gives you the impression of actually what it was like and how steep it was to approach the coast. Back at ground level again, this is a crater caused by the impact of a meteorite many thousands, if not millions of years ago. You can see the size of it because that little speck in the distance is actually my Range Rover. This is also used for some Icelandic off-road climbing out of the crater stuff. Now we jump right ahead. I've actually left Iceland here. This is the Faroe Islands, where I had to stay for 3 days on my return trip. At this point the ferry, the Norrøna, goes off to Bergen in Norway and comes back before picking up the passengers again and carrying us back to the Shetland Islands. I'm not going to say a lot during these photographs. They speak for themselves. The Faroes at the time was actually dry most of the time, very difficult to get beer, so it was quite a quiet trip, shall we say. This is a place called Samson. There's also some quite old relics there, and a few, relics of the war, really. There's a few guns coming up in a moment as well, both cannon and more modern versions. You can see the style of housing as you did in Iceland. It is quite common, should I say, for houses to be fitted with grass roofs or grass coverings over their roofs. I'm not exactly sure why. It may be, and I'm guessing here, to do with protecting the tin and not cooking yourself inside when the sun comes down, keeping the house cooler. But maybe it's just pure insulation. Now, I'm not actually sure at what point these photographs change to be those on the Shetland Islands. It's a long time ago. I know this one was the Shetland Islands, and I know this next one was. But we've reached the end of the slideshow now anyway. So thanks for watching, and I hope you found this a little bit interesting.